I think I should allow
Yeah, you do.
for the people in the
It's a
front.
small space.
It will be nice if you have a mirror at the back there, so that when you slip the slide, you can actually see.
No, I heard. Yeah.
Instead of having to turn around every single time.
Was that the right slide? Was that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 'cause you don't know, and this one should work. Not like the previous dodgy one.
Yeah, that one will work. You could do it on that that tablet will change when you change.
Yeah, if you put the tablet up with your thing, then you have your
That will
notes and
change
the tablet right there.
Alright.
Click, click, click. Or you can do what Roger does occasionally, glance back.
Yeah.
Every now and then.
Or just wing it.
Is Barry still on the right slide?
That's right. Just wing it. I started that song so slow at the beginning. That's why I changed it. So I thought, shall I change
It's
it?
all good.
There we go.
You flow with the spirit.
I just try to follow. Sometimes I have to go back and forth, try to find it. No, that's not the word. Oh, wait. It's all good.
It's all good. It's the way we roll. Yeah.
Harry Watkins used to really hate it.
Oh.
Harry Watkins used to do that.
We can put it on the other side. First, we put it on the other side. What do we get?
Barry can cope though. Barry's used to it.
It's all good.
Cool.
If I make a mistake, there's grace.
Yeah. Amen.
Okay, should we get started?
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It's definitely a brilliant day. Nice dry day. Just enjoying just being out. For me, whenever it's sunny, even when it's like frozen outside or snowing outside, it just lifts your spirits. Just gives you a little bit more of a bounce in your step. But so today I want to talk about this. So when you read this, what are some of the things that come into your mind? How do you interpret that into everyday life? Anyone have any examples? I've got plenty, but yeah.
In teaching design and technology, a lot of what we do is demonstrate and model how to do something. Mm-hmm. So we'll gather the class around and they're watching you do it, and then they go off and do it themselves. A bit like the monkey see.
Yeah, they have to, yeah.
That make me the monkey, isn't it?
I say it's like copying a behaviour without really thinking about it.
Right.
So because to a certain degree, when we talk about monkeys, it's sort of something like that doesn't think or have the capacity to question what they're doing. Yeah. So it's that kind of thing. There's a positive side or a negative side to it, but it basically means doing what you see without thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Just following the trend and following something that you see without question.
Yeah.
For me, what comes to my mind is my 2-year-old nephew. So he's just come to the stage. My aunt had just visited them recently, which came in like, oh, Miss, be careful what you do in front of me, because now the dad, I got a present from Kenya, and then he's like, oh, thank you, when he got the T-shirt, and then the son now went to the bottom of the stairs where his dad was standing and was doing the exact same thing, and mom doing something that was saying. Yeah. And that's also what he's doing every time he sees his mom doing stuff, and is starting to follow everything that they do.
Yes. Yeah.
I just wanted to add also.
Okay. Well, yeah, it doesn't matter.
No, I just wanted to add to the Rata, because I think you see it a lot with little children, and they are literally like little monkeys, just like, following whatever they see and copying that behavior. But the good thing is they will copy the good behavior as well, So if you demonstrate good behavior to them, but all the bad behavior, then they come back from preschool and school, and it's just like, you're like, where does this come from? All this behavior. So yeah, I just wanted to add.
Yeah.
For me, it's the dancing.
Dancing. Yes.
So basically, if I'm watching a video of someone, obviously you know who that person is. So
I know. Yeah, I know who that is. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So basically, I mean, it's for like anyone who's like dancing. If I see them dancing, I don't know how I do. I just like look at them and then I watch them like move.
Yeah.
I watch them do it.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, yeah, because you're inspired by that person, right? Yeah,
So in attachment theory, so we
attachment
all have
theory.
what's called mirror neurons,
Okay.
and so we have like part of our it's hardwired into us to reflect kind of what we see,
Hmm.
and so like when you're kind of coding a child to a mother in a sense of a safe what is a safe attachment, and that looking eye to eye and copying facial expressions and things like that is how you hardwire connection and
Hmm.
safe connection. So we actually have mirror neurons in our brain that respond to that.
Yeah, I suppose, with children, the younger they are, the more susceptible they are to copying, right? And then as you become an adult, then you're a bit more aware,
Hopefully.
and hopefully, yes, hopefully. But it's exactly that. As you're saying, it's the influence of observational learning and imitation. Okay, the word there is influence, because we are all influenced in one way or the other. Imitation is a primary form of learning. We learn by observing and mimicking the actions of others, especially those we look up to or who are in positions of authority. And this is exactly what you guys all said. You know, we mimic our parents, we mimic and we imitate those who inspire us, the way that we act, the way that what we say to others, how we treat other people, how we dance, how we sing, how we do anything. We at some point, without any experience ourselves, we learn from those people around us. What have you done? What have you, apart from the theories of what we just spoke about, what have you personally done in the past that has copied somebody else? And that could have been a good result. That could be a not so good result. But what are some of the things that you've done personally?
For me, when I was training to become a lab scientist, we tend to watch the seniors, read the plates, report the results. We do 3 days of observation and two days of theory. So 3 days here with the senior, just copying, So in a way, it sort of helped my learning and eventually led to what I become later on.
Hmm.
So that's what I can say I did in the past. Yeah.
So when I went to secondary school, I always felt like a bit of an outsider in the town where I grew up. It's only about 6 or 7,000 people, and it was the town where they made Dr. Martens.
Hmm.
And so the coolest kids at school all had Dr. Martens, or like the toughest, the hard group
Hmm.
of guys, the ones that everyone looked up to the most.
Hmm.
And my mum refused to buy me some Dr. Martens, so I persuaded some, I don't know what the right word is, some year 11 student whose boots were falling apart to give me his old boots. And so
Nice.
I used to wear them to school. They're about 8 sizes too big for me, and with holes in the bottom. And I used to wear them to school, so I forced my mum to buy me a pair so that I could belong,
Right.
so I
Yeah.
could belong to the group. So I wanted to
Oh.
imitate to
Yeah.
belong to the group.
Yeah. Wow. It's always when you have pressure at school, right? Because when I was in school, um, yeah, there's so many things that happen in school. But one of the things was when one kid said, "Oh, guess what? I've got a cigarette," and then suddenly, one thing led to another. I found myself with that group behind the school wall in between breaks having a puff. I hated it. I hated it, but I did it because I was influenced by them and I wanted to fit in.
I did the same. But I wanted to say, like my family, my mom and dad, they've got the reputation that if you visit their house, you stay like until really, really late. And even though I moved to the UK, I now have that reputation amongst my friends, and their husbands will be like, "Oh, you came to Reni's house? Must I sort my own dinner?" And there's always this constant panic amongst the husbands if they're coming to my house. So somehow I just copied that, the way my home was, and I copied that, even though we're in separate countries. Unfortunately, Robert's quite happy to have all the moms still quite late.
It's called noise cancelling headphones and a separate room upstairs. That works very well. Yes. All right. So yeah, so imitation is a primary form of learning, and you can stay, it's a survival thing, isn't it? We have to learn from other people to be able to learn how to survive, how to going to doing well at school. I mean, I didn't do very well at school, but I know that there was certain kids who did well, and everybody was trying to just compete with them. Who's going to get the highest grades in the exams, and who's going to get an A star, whatever you call it nowadays. And all you guys know, I didn't even graduate from high school, as Relene reminded me again this morning. I didn't get. I don't know what you guys call. I don't know what you guys call matriculation.
What age is that?
That's 18. That's like end of A levels. Yeah. So anyway.
I don't have anything else, but I got that.
So yeah. The importance of role models. Our behaviors are heavily influenced by the examples set by those around us. This emphasizes the responsibility of those in leadership. So one year, I think it was back in 1996, I finished my first year of technical high school that I didn't even get accepted the first time round, but someone made a phone call and I was accepted. But anyway, then so I worked for and I was studying civil engineering, and then the second year I got a job in Hong Kong and I was working there for a year, and I was working in an architectural company, and there was a structural department in that company. And I remember looking at all these chartered engineers thinking, oh man, I want to be like one of those. They take me to the site to see what they do, what they've done. They've showed me different ways of drawings and calculations, and I was like, I want to achieve that. And that environment gives you that inspiration, something to aim for in the future. When you grew up, who was your role model? Who did you look up to? And that doesn't matter whether it's career wise, or whether it's social wise, or whether it's dancing. Uh, who was your role model when you were growing up? That you sort of felt you were really inspired by this person. Are they?
For me, it's my dad. Dad is always on the move, hardworking, careful, disciplinarian. So just name it. It's just like he just kind of like enforce that on all of us, the children, and so today we appreciate him because it's just like we keep saying we never give up, never give up, work hard, in terms of faith, working hard. That's why even till today I don't know how to sleep. Even though I'm tired, I don't have good sleep because it's like that was how I got up. If there are those beside my father, I feel they're not thinking. If you're thinking, you shouldn't sleep. So, and it's like that. It will also, what's a great role model for me?
Yeah. Yeah, because absolutely, because that was a crucial time when you receive that positive guidance. So when you're confused, when you didn't understand whether it was right or not, wrong, or making the right decisions or not, there's someone there to say, this is the way you need to go. Yeah. George?
So there was a boy, probably about a year older than me, and my sister's boyfriend sang in his band and lived in another village to me. But the fact that he had a band and he had an electric guitar and he had speakers and that they were playing concerts blew me away. And I went, I went and sat in their bedroom and watched them practice and was like really looked up to them because that's what I wanted to do. And there was someone doing it that really resonated with me. And then one Christmas, I found out that my second uncle and my uncle had been in a band and had an album, and he showed me his album that he had, and I'd heard of the band. There's a band called The Amazing Darts that when I was a kid that he'd played the bass for briefly, I think he had, and it just blew me away like that, and I was like, oh, just worship, just instant kind of like, because it really resonated with something inside me.
Absolutely, and you're doing a fantastic job with us every Sunday. You know, um,
and also during because she also encouraged me to do a lot of reading. She gave me a book with in terms of how to handle marriage and relationships and all that. So
yeah. And you listen to that advice, you listen to what input, it works for you, and then you'll be in a position to help somebody else as well. You know, because you've seen the positive impact that that influence had on your life.
I'll share.
Yeah.
It's interesting when people say it's my mom and my dad. So my mom and my dad, when I was growing up, say, do not imitate us. Yeah, do something different. Education is our inheritance. Anyway, we grew up, and I come. I remember one in my university. This one guy, very good at computers, and I'm very competitive at programming, and he was always on top, always second. So instead of competing with him, I imitated him, befriended him, spent a lot of time with him, and I learned a lot of programming tricks
Yeah.
and coding tricks with him.
Yeah.
And we ended up creating stuff together. So which is my role
Yeah.
model.
And look where you are now. You know,
Yeah.
that entire building's security depends on Merv's here. um, it has the potential for both positive and negative influence. Imitation can lead to the adoption and beneficial habits and values, but it can also result in replication of harmful behaviors. We've all experienced peer pressure at school, sometimes not in a very good way, but we've also experienced peers influence us in a good way. Every now and then, something pops up in our village where someone's doing a Duke of Edinburgh thing, and they volunteer and they help, and then it's great because we see how the peers at school influence each other, and they encourage each other to do great things. Um, there's been, I'm sure we can go on because there's so many examples, right, of people who has helped us to be able to guide our thoughts and our actions in a positive way. The power of social influence. This is something that is pretty relevant now, isn't it? In a world that we've got so much social information, social media, smartphones, tablets, everything is now online. But also you yourself can be very persuasive, right? So, Raleen, recently has this thing where about microplastics, about microplastics, right? About water bottles, that releases these little things, even these ones that's quite durable. You put in the dishwasher and stuff. So then she went to have a dinner with one of our neighbors once, right? And then she was talking about this plastics and how you get it everywhere. It goes into your system. It's bad for you. The next day, she sends Reen a text saying, "I got rid of all my plastics."
Wow.
I'm thinking, wow, that's it's
Wow.
amazing, and now I'm gonna have I had to now get rid of all my plastic bottles and buy a whole load of these steel water bottles and use glass and all that stuff. But it's you know some people just um, has that ability to influence. Uh, you know, we yeah. I'm sure all of us has had that had that experience where we've been persuaded by somebody to buy something. Right. Where are we? This there's so because there's so many different things around us. Sometimes we get confused. You're probably wondering where's the scriptures coming. I promise you, the scriptures are coming. I can see Roger's tapping his foot there,
No, no, no.
thinking
Am I?
when you anyway. But all these things has developed a need for us to think critically about anything that we see, right? You could, I mean, all these things. Have you ever seen online where there's a photo of somebody and then there's a caption, a quote, and you're thinking, ah, that person said that, but did that person really say that? You know, or is it something that someone just created? I can create something like that. Put it, on somebody's photo and say, yep, that's what that person said. How can you tell? How can you tell? Uh, but we need to have that ability to question what we see, what we read, and question the influence that we all have uh, from the people around us. Child development. Children learning language, social skills, behaviors by observing their parents, siblings, and peers. We went through we went through a stage. I think it's better now, but Robbie didn't like his photos being taken, but Ruben did, and then suddenly, Ruben's like, oh, I don't want my photo taken either, because he's copying his brother. He says, no, I don't want my photo, because every time, there's a camera there, he starts running away. I think he's better now. It took a couple of years. We've banned him from watching kids YouTube. Because the influence is still there now, because he screams at everything that he every time he plays a video game, it's just full of screaming. Ah! Because I'm pretty sure that the early days of watching these videos had an impact on him. You know, um, social media. We go back to this one again. Who remembers that challenge where you pour a bucket of ice water over your head? Yeah, that went all over the world, didn't it? Someone did it. You saw someone do it. They challenged you, and you have to nominate three other people, and you feel the pressure. I have to do it because someone has nominated me to do it, and you do it. You take a video of yourself, and you put ice on your head, and you say, "I want three of your friends." Someone nominated me. I just ignored that. But anyway, I didn't. I'm thinking, why do I want to put ice on my head? Or this. There was this years ago. This thing called neck nomination. I don't know if you guys remember that. It's about necking drinks, necking alcohol, and then you sort of the same principle where you have to nominate some of the people to neck. And unfortunately, a couple of some children died because they necked a whole bottle of vodka. But it's all these things. Um, Someone else sent me this thing where they nominated me to do 20 push-ups every day for a month. I'm like, no thanks. Oh, right. So and there's so many things where we tend to just follow the trend, follow everything. Workplace gossip, you know when you go into that tea room, the kitchen, make yourself some tea, and then suddenly somebody says, oh, have you heard about this person? The secret, and you get into that, you influence about to participate about talking about your colleagues behind their back, you know, or you just follow a process, you know. Two years ago, when I started one of my contracts, um, and I was working happily, and then 5 months later, I got a call from one of their resource, whatever human resources person, saying, "Oh, Rob, you're going to have to sign this statement." I said, "Why?" They said, "Oh, it's part of the process." And I said, "According to the law, it isn't part of the process." And I extracted and I said, "Right, this is the reference to the legislation. This is the section. This is the clause. This is the government document that says I don't have to do it." But it says, "Yeah, but you have to." I'm like, "No, I don't." It says, "Oh, I'm going to have to escalate this then." I said, "Please escalate it, all right? Because the only way I'm going to sign that is if the government debates it in Parliament, it gets voted through as legislation, it reaches Royal Assent where the King passes the law and becomes law, then I'll sign it. In the meantime, I'm not going to sign it." Then there was quiet. Sent me the same message again a year later saying, "You need to sign this." I said, "Look, here's the email I sent you a year ago, you know, start a petition or whatever, but it hasn't changed." Okay. And then they went quiet. But it's like, well, even when you quote parts of the law, people are like, "No, but this is the process that I've been taught to follow." You know, it's people don't people fall in the trap of not thinking for themselves critically. And the scriptures are coming. Okay, the spiritual part is coming
Come on, Rob.
for those online as well. Um, Cultural norms. There's so many cultural differences we have in the world, right? There's the way people eat. I think, was it in India, people eat with their hands, with the left hand or the right hand. You know, um, there's the different dances in Spain. You have the flamenco dancing. You've got um, different types of dancing. In Japan, you bow. Um, in Also in the East, when you give people a business card, you can't just, "Here's my business card." You have to give it to them with two hands. You have to receive it with two hands. When you receive their business card, you have to, I mean, you have to look at it, acknowledge it, and all that stuff. Don't put it in your pocket, but you treat it as a precious piece of information. Okay. New Zealand, they do nose kisses. Like they just rub it, I think something like that. So yeah, and because I remember when I met Rilene for the first time, all her family kiss on the lips when they greet the just the men and the women, not the men to the men. But the thing is, then I'm like, "Oh no!" I go to her auntie's house, and then suddenly there's a big pair of lips coming towards me, and I'm promising. I think that's why I started getting fever blisters from, because I think I got it from one of them. But I just went along with it, right? Because, okay, well, fine. I just kiss all the aunties, and I think eventually I don't know. I think eventually
I don't do it anymore. It's sort of, yeah, I think everybody became realized, right? So when we were younger,
yeah. So yeah, um, but we look at example. Finally, we've reached the spiritual part of this message. Joseph. We all know the story of Joseph, right? He was Jacob's favorite son. Jacob made this really special coat for him. And he went off to his brothers and saying, "I had this dream, and you guys all bowing down towards me." And then his brothers got jealous, sold him off as a slave, and then that was when his adventures begin. Genesis, if you have a chance, read the story of Joseph. I mean, from Genesis 37 down to the end of chapter 50. I mean, it's an example where Joseph was faced with so many challenges. He could have been influenced in so many ways. His first experience was when he was sold as a servant to Potiphar. When Potiphar was out, his wife, was tempting him, wanting to sleep with him, but he, you know, continuously refused to do what's wrong in the eyes of God. In Genesis 39, verse 9, he says, "How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" You'd think that in his time of desperation, you know, wanting to be free again, wanting to, that he would be influenced to do whatever it takes to be able to get out of that situation. Okay, but no, he held on to his integrity and decided that he was not prepared to sin against God. He was obviously put in prison as a result. But then Pharaoh had a dream. You know, he had the dreams. So in Genesis 41, uh, Pharaoh had two dreams, and nobody could interpret. The first dream was in Genesis 41, verse 2. In the dream, 7 cows came out of the river, and stood there eating grass. They were healthy, good-looking cows. Then 7 more cows came out of the river and stood on the bank of the river by the healthy cows. But these cows were thin and looked sick. The 7 cows ate the 7 healthy cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. He had a second dream. He saw 7 heads of grain sprouting, but they were thin and scorched by the hot wind. The thin heads of grain ate the 7 good heads of grain. Then Pharaoh woke up again and realized it was only a dream. Next morning, Pharaoh was worried about these dreams, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told these men the dreams, but none of them could explain the dreams. Then one of his servants said, "Oh, hang on a second, I know this guy called Joseph, and this guy, he's in prison because of what of his experience with situation with Potiphar and his wife." So Pharaoh calls Joseph to say, "Look, can you explain this dream?" And in verse 25 it says, "Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, both of these dreams have the same meaning. God is telling you what will happen soon. The 7 good cows and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 good years. And the 7 thin, sick-looking cows and 7 thin heads of grain mean that there will be 7 years of hunger in this area. These 7 bad years will come after the 7 good years. God has shown you what will happen. He will make these things happen just as I told you. For 7 years there will be plenty of food in Egypt. But then there will be 7 years of hunger. The people will forget how much food there had been in Egypt before. This famine will rule the country. It will be so bad that people will forget what it was like to have plenty of food. Pharaoh, you had 2 dreams about the same thing. That means God wanted to show you that he really will make this happen, and he will make it happen soon. So Pharaoh, you should choose a wise, intelligent man and put him in charge of Egypt." Later on in verse 39 of Genesis 41, so Pharaoh said to Joseph, "God showed these things to you, so you must be the wisest man. I will put you in charge of my country, and the people will obey all your commands. I will be the only one more powerful than you." You know, Joseph used his wisdom to influence Pharaoh. You know, he interpreted the dream that nobody else could, right? But sometimes I think Joseph was always a very wise man. He was always someone who contemplated everything that was brought before him. He just didn't want to go with the flow. He didn't want to be influenced by anything to be able to advance his own agenda or anything like that. You know, and because of his wisdom, Pharaoh put him in charge, gave him a bit more, the biggest responsibility in the land. The question is, what do you do with the wisdom that you have? You know, how can you share your wisdom, help other people, and influence other people in a great way. Later on, his brothers. We all know the story where his brothers came, didn't recognize him, and he wanted to, and he gave them food and grain because it was time of famine, and instead of punishing his brothers, he decided to forgive them. He decided to provide for them. And it's such an inspiring story of Joseph being someone who could have been influenced by so many things around him to make decisions, to preserve himself, to advance himself. Yet he decided to stick to what is right in God's eyes, and use the authority given to him by Pharaoh to be able to benefit everybody else, and eventually his family benefited as well. But imagine how many temptations there had been. And the question for us is, you know, when we want something, when we want to achieve some of our goals, but then there's a straight and narrow way, but then there's another way where you can cut corners, you know, and from the Bible, from the examples that we read in the scriptures, that the straight and narrow is more difficult, because perhaps there's less security, to achieve what you want. There's no cutting corners. There's no deceit or whatever. Um, and people, a lot of people fall for that. But the question is, how do you react when things don't go your way into achieving what you want, or you're in a situation where you feel the pressure to conform to other people, you know, to please other people, to please your boss, to look good in front of your neighbors, your colleagues, your friends, you know? How does that influence your decision when you know that there's a fine line between righteousness and unrighteousness? Think about the situations. Think about how you responded in the past, but also how you will respond in the future. Does the story of Joseph inspire you? Exodus 32. This is when Israelites. This is the part where Moses was on Mount Sinai, spending time with God. And this is the part where the Israelites were at the bottom. They don't know where Moses has been, and then what do? They ended up making a golden calf and worshiping this golden calf. Right? Not only did the Israelites do it, but Aaron, who was Moses' brother, was supposed to be like his right hand man, looking after the people and making sure everybody, and if you read in verse Exodus 32, from verse 1, it says, when the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him. Aaron answered them, take off the the gold earrings that your wives and your sons and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me. I mean, that was quite a quick decision, wasn't it? It wasn't like, trying to calm them down or trying to give them some assurance. So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, I mean, creating a golden calf, an idol, isn't good enough. Aaron even goes one step further and creates an altar for this. Says, "Tomorrow there'll be a festival to the Lord." So the next day the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterwards they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, because your people, whom you brought out of Egypt, have become corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them, and have made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it, and have said, 'These are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt.' I have seen these people," the Lord said to Moses, "and they are stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone, so that my anger may burn against them, and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation." So we see here how angry God was. Even, God's decisions was influenced by the Israelites. He had plans for them, deliver them from Egypt, and suddenly they betrayed him by worshiping someone else under the leadership of Aaron, who not only built the calf, made the calf out of gold. I'm sure it's premeditated, because it will take a while to melt gold and carve all these things, and he was fully aware of what he's doing. Then he also builds an altar, to worship this thing, and God was influenced by their behavior. In verse 11 says, "But Moses sought the favor of the Lord his God. 'Lord,' he said, 'why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say, it was with evil intent that he brought them out, to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them off the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce anger, relent, and do not bring disaster on your people. Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you swore by your own self, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give your descendants all this land I promised them, and it will be their inheritance forever.' Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened." I love this verse, because it shows that God was influenced by the Israelites' behavior, and he was really angry. But he was also influenced by Moses. So Moses was like, "No, but people are going to say, yeah, but you brought them out to kill them again, and then you'll bring your name into disrepute, and then God's like, oh, okay, well, right, I'm not going to bring disaster on you. I'm going to listen to Moses, so even God's able to be influenced.
He's willing.
Sorry?
He's willing.
Yes, he's willing. Yes, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, and it's so if God is able to listen to the people, to us, to humans, how much should we also, say that, what, we need to set our opinions aside, listen to God, listen to the people around us, and think, how are our actions going to impact those around me. The theory of monkey see, monkey do is a reminder of the impact, of observation and in imitation in our lives. It's it highlights the importance of role models, of being examples set by others. But you know, don't just listen to you know to don't just read the scriptures. So many times in the past, in years that I've been going to church, so many people have said after a service, after a message, after a family group discussion, saying, "Oh, that helped so much. That helped so much." You know, and then through the years, I've watched how people's life hasn't really changed that much. You know, it's one thing listening and reading the Bible, reading the scriptures, and saying and believing that that helps you, that helps in your situation, your parenting, your marriage, your work. But it's something else to really put it into action. How did Jesus' teachings influence us? You know, Jesus sacrificed his life for all of us. He lived his years and his ministry in a way to show us, you know, his example. Teach us how we need to treat each other. Teach us how we need to put our relationship with God first. The importance of looking after the poor, looking after the sick, having compassion on other people, you know, being generous towards other people. But in the same light, having the humility, to listen, to learn from everybody. And it's his sacrifice, uh, you know, it's his sacrifice that has, influenced all of us being here today. You know, and I think as we remember the cross, as we remember, um, you know, all the things that we've learned through the years. You know, let us be grateful and thankful that we did have someone, Jesus, to sacrifice his life for us, and to be able to, to for us to be an example to others as well. With that in mind, let's pray for the bread and the fruit of the vine. Lord, we are just so grateful for your example. We are so grateful that in a world that is so difficult to to navigate in so many ways, that you've given us direction, you've given us a way, a path to follow. You've given us humble hearts to be able to learn from you. You've given us uh, more than what we can ever ask for and imagine, and you will still do. I thank you so much for the example of Jesus. I thank you so much that we are in a position that we can learn, that we can help other people, and I pray that in every way that we will, that we will think about how we conduct ourselves, think about how we are able to, to use our decisions to be a positive impact on other people. We thank you so much for your son. Thank you so much for the love that you have for us. For instance, in your son's name, amen.